Hey y'all, did you miss me? I know I missed you. I took just a short break to do some summer reading of my own, but that means I've got so many books to wrap up with you. Let's check it out. Hi there! I'm Michelle with the Goffstown Public Library, where I'm an adult services librarian. I'm so glad to have you here today because I've got to say, it's been pretty lonely at the Goffstown Public Library without all of you coming in our doors. It just makes me happy we can have this online conversation. In this episode of Book Talk with Michelle, I'll be sharing what I've been reading in August. But that's a pretty one-sided conversation, so don't forget to leave your comments below with what you've been reading this month. And just a quick thing before we begin, I want to congratulate our community on reaching 200 subscribers. Thank you, new subscribers, for believing in our content. We're so glad to have you here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, we've got book talks for all ages, story times, recordings of programs we've done, crafts, and more. So do yourself a favor, join the growing community, and hit that red subscribe button today. Awesome, so last video I talked about the reasons that I've been having a hard time getting into reading lately. Has anyone else totally burnt themselves out of reading? The ongoing pandemic has changed almost every facet of our lives, so it's no wonder our reading lives have changed too. I'm here to suggest just go with the changes. For me, I've been reading light fiction and comedic nonfiction. Not even one graphic novel. It's not usually my bag, but here we are. It all got started when I picked up a copy of The Imperfects by Amy Myerson on a whim. The Imperfects is part family drama, part legal mystery, where the dysfunctional Miller family overcomes past differences while discovering family history in the wake of their matriarch's death and their surprising inheritance. In the story, we've got estranged siblings growing up and growing together, children learning to see their parents as whole and as broken people, and an international mystery spanning decades and continents concerning a priceless diamond gone missing from the crumbling Habsburg Empire. If you like books centering around family relationships, specifically women's relationships, and you like historical fiction, heavy on the fiction, The Imperfects could work for you. The history of the real-life Florentine diamond and the story the author weaves around it is sure to spark your imagination. The Millers' exploration of the past leads them into the World War II era. If you're a person who usually likes World War II narratives but are finding them a little bit too heavy right now, let me suggest The Imperfects. There's enough light family banter to keep the traumas of history at bay while still doing justice to the era. I gave this book a 3 because it was a nice distraction with an interesting premise, but I don't think I'll be carrying this story forward with me. It's the perfect non-committal book that I'm looking for right now. After putting it on my TBR in May, I finally got around to reading The White Man's Guide to White Male Writers of the Western Canon by Dana Schwartz. As I described in that TBR, The White Man's Guide is a collection of biographical sketches of white male writers, the likes of which you had to read in high school. The book is narrated with the tone of a pretentious young white man studying to be a writer in graduate school, a la Schwartz's satirical Twitter account, Guy in Your MFA. I also gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. It was the non-consequential light read I had hoped it would be. I held a smile on my face throughout, although I couldn't decide whether I found the tone humorous or deplorable. After all, even though the pretentious tone was in jest, no one wants to be patronized to for a whole book, so the tone probably comes across better in the Twitter account. That being said, it was still an amusing read, and I learned a couple things about the writers. I stand by my original recommendation of this work for literary nerds looking for a light read. It's doing what it wants to do, and it's doing it well. I also cleared some space from my personal bookshelf when I read Walk Me Home by Liza Kendall, a pseudonym for the writing team of Liz Maverick and Karen Kendall. Walk Me Home is the first book in a new gentle romance series, Silver Lake Ranch, where each book follows a Braddock brother of Silver Lake, Texas. In Walk Me Home, Jake Braddock and Charlie Nash have a second chance at love after a devastating fire in their youth caused a fallout between their families. With Charlie back in town, Jake can't help but confront the past and his long-buried feelings for his goodbye girl. Charlie is also chasing resolution. Who started the fire so many years ago? Can her family forgive Jake and finally move on? And can these feelings for Jake be anything more than unrequited? The plot is centered around an outrageous wedding that is sure to give you a giggle. There's good chemistry between the protagonists, plus there's no graphic sex or very many swear words. I gave this book, you guessed it, a 3. It was another breezy book where I could turn off my brain and get lost in the idyllic small Texas town. I will admit that the second act conflict felt a bit contrived, and the ending felt a little forced. I don't doubt that Charlie and Jake deserve a happy ending, but by the time the novel ended, I felt like they had more to unpack. In other words, I just wanted more time with them. I'd recommend this book for fans of contemporary romance who don't mind leaning into tropes. I mean, Jake is a hunky firefighter. How much more romance novel can you get? But it's that kind of genre fiction that's giving me respite from the outside world right now. When I needed a break from fiction, I looked to How Not to Get Shot and Other Advice from White People by DL Hewley. This book is a sardonic instruction manual for avoiding police brutality, written by a king of comedy. This book succeeds at shining advice at the dumb advice white people give black people. Advice like, pull up your pants, and don't resist arrest, and comply with instructions. I love the premise, and I'm glad this book exists, but I ended up giving a 3 in the end. Even though the satire was biting, and the premise was snarky, there wasn't very many funny ha-ha moments in the book. That, coupled with the lack of new insights and social justice, just left me feeling middle of the road about this title. I recommend How Not to Get Shot to social justice advocates who need to blow off steam at the racial injustices in the world. The topics addressed in this book are weighty, so exercise self-care when engaging with it. Just know that Hewley's trademark wit doesn't let readers get bogged down in the horrors of racism. This book really typifies laughing through the pain. Don't worry, I saved the best for last. Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson has been described as moving and uproarious, which is a description I can stand behind. It's the story of a young woman who finds meaning in her life while caring for her best friend's stepchildren. Lest that sound too maudlin for you, let me give you the catch. Those children, they can spontaneously combust. Yep, the children ignite when they're agitated. The passages describing this remarkable and disturbing ability are enchanting. Truly, they're the highlight in a novel full of highlights. Take, for example, the narration style. It took me a while to put my finger on it, but Wilson's unflinching prose gave me hardcore Catcher in the Rye vibes. It was borderline uncomfortable to have such a blunt and emotionally stunted protagonist. Overall, it was a unique investigation into the trauma that children face and how adults can exacerbate their pain. The absurdity of the premise lets you laugh in astonishment throughout, never dwelling on the cruelties of life. And the thing that pulled it all together for me was, even though no one in this book is winning Parent of the Year, the narrative shows you don't have to be a perfect parent to be a loving one. This was the only book this month that got 4 out of 5 stars for me. And there you have it, my August wrap-up. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Don't forget to comment below with what you're reading to join the conversation. As always, any book I mentioned today is listed in the description below, along with information about the Goffstown Public Library's e-library. All you need is your library card to start downloading library content to your devices free of charge. Like and share if you got something out of this video, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll be back here next week for another episode of Book Talk with Michelle, and by subscribing, you won't miss it. Again, I'm Michelle with the Goffstown Public Library, and I'll check you out later. Bye!